Welcome to the Envibe Live podcast with Amy Parker and Cheryl Dunn. By tuning in, you are joining a community that will inspire you to increase balance, wellness, and joy in your life. We'll offer expert information and insightful conversations to help us all on our journey to live more in vibe. For more information and articles, remember to also check out our website at envibelife.com. That's ENVIBELIFE.com. And we're grateful that you're here.
Hi, and welcome to the Envibe Live podcast. You're here with Amy Parker and Cheryl Dunn, and we have a special guest today. And our special guest is none other than Stephen Dunn, better known as Cheryl's husband, and also a fantastic physical therapist. And he is going to join us today to give us some information on bodywork, fascia, trauma being stored in the body, and all sorts of fun topics. And so we're so glad you're here to join us. The first thing I'd like to do is ask Stephen and Cheryl about their practice. You guys have a unique model that you share together with a movement studio and a physical therapy clinic all in one, and you've really developed your own model that other people around the nation are starting to follow. So why don't you guys tell us about that and what it's like to work together? Did that help develop the model or hurt it? And take it from there.
So we're co-owners of Core Therapy and Pilates. We've been in business for 18 years, roughly.
It'll be 17 years, almost 15 here in Austin.
Yes. And we've worked together the whole time. I feel like working together has kind of really meshed what we do. It fell into our laps.
Yeah, we weren't looking for it. We weren't searching for it.
It just worked out. Stephen was a physical therapist. I was into movement. We went through a Pilates certification together that was really geared towards therapy. And over the years, just as we've worked together, it's evolved into what we do. So I teach Pilates and gyrotonic and gyrokinesis. Stephen, he can tell a little bit more about what he does.
Yeah, I'm a physical therapist for 21 years now and got exposed to Pilates back in 2002, and Cheryl and I went through our training together to get certified, and it basically taught me to look at the body holistically. It got her out of working in the corporate world, and it got us working together without really a plan of that at all. It was just kind of, again, it all kind of fell into our laps. And once we started kind of building our business together, people would see me for PT. I was incorporating Pilates into their physical therapy sessions. When insurance was cutting them off, then they would move over and work with Cheryl and start a Pilates program with her. So it's kind of like, how do we work within the system but figure out a way to get people better longer term, because the system didn't allow them to get as better as we wanted them to.
And what we discovered by people incorporating both what he does manually through physical therapy and what I do through the movement, people were getting better for longer periods of time. They were getting better quicker. We were seeing just better results than just regular traditional PT. And so that's really now our foundation and kind of mandatory. If you really want to get better and go through our practice, it's kind of the commitment we're asking of the patient, that you're willing to not only lie on the table and get some of the manual work that we're going to go into more in a second, but you're also willing to do the work.
Do the
homework, do the exercise, do the homework, whether it's release or exercise, whatever it is. It's just, we need a little bit more involvement from the patient than I would say a typical physical therapy setting would ask.
So in physical therapy studios that incorporate movement, but maybe more traditional, lifting weights, doing traditional exercises, how would this be different than that?
It's more of a lifestyle. You know, when people learn to be aware with Pilates, learn to be aware with gyrotonic exercise, it's a way to take from the hour in here and apply it to their regular life. The traditional PT stuff that I did prior to this, it didn't translate into anybody's life. It was like they could do the work then and there, but they didn't necessarily stand up taller. They didn't necessarily throw the ball better. They might have gotten and made improvements in PT, but it was like in PT, that was it. When they left and went outside of their PT was here, they were now in their life. And we created something that's like, you apply what we teach you to your life. You apply this to playing your sport. You apply this to sitting at the computer. You apply
pushing
this
the
to
grocery
whatever.
cart, holding your children,
Exactly.
waiting in line at Starbucks. I mean, all those things that you really take this mindfulness and apply it to what you might think is the mundane things that happen throughout your day, but you really start to incorporate the thought process that we're asking you to bring into your life.
To be aware.
Yeah, be aware.
So at Envibe Life, we talk a lot about balance and balance between the mind and the body and the spirit. Has this been something you've seen in this practice too? When you say you're incorporating it into every part of your life, that just brings to me everything pulls together. How do you see that in your practice?
Well, I think that's why it's easy for us to work together, because we're both coming from that same place of that. So it's easy to work together. She's doing her thing, chasing her passion here. I'm doing my thing, and I'm in my room. She's out there, and we cross paths, but we're not necessarily
Right.
in each other's
That makes
face
it
all the
easy to
time.
work with your spouse.
We're not in the same room together very much. We're not we're not necessarily in each other's face. But we're both doing our thing, and our things correlate with each other. And I think I'm getting off a little
Off of what your question was, like how we incorporate balance. That's probably what we're asking of our patients, is that if I give you an exercise, I don't want the effort to be a 10, like you're working so hard. I want it to be a 2. A 2 is realistic. And when I mean that, I'm talking 10 effort levels, versus a 2 effort level. That 2 will sustain you all day, so that your posture first thing in the morning is as good as your posture is in the evening when you're at home with your family cooking dinner. 2 is going to maintain you. 10 is going to poop you out quickly. And so I feel like the balance between what we do, and like that's me in my realm and what I teach, but the balance is incorporating the fascial work that Stephen does to the movement work that I do, and that those find a nice balance, that you can't just do one, because some people want to just do one. Because don't get me wrong, if Stephen's gentle with his fascial work, it's a very relaxing hour, I would say, and that might be great just to come in and lay down on the table and have that kind of work done. But at the end of the day, if you don't evolve past that and get up off of that table and move, all that work he's done isn't really going to sustain you. You have to strengthen in this new place that he's put you. And that's the balance between what he does and what I do, making those work together. And then also educating the patient enough that they understand that that has to be part of their commitment.
Yeah, because some people only want to do the release work, and they don't really get beyond the point. And some people only want to do exercise.
Yeah, some people only want to exercise.
And they don't want to come in and see me for 2 or 3 visits just to get everything balanced mechanically, biomechanics, their fascia as loose as possible, but teach them some ways to manage that on their own.
And I find that when someone only wants to do one or the other, it's very natural to have that want. There's where the imbalance sets in. Somebody who only wants to do exercise, maybe they have a harder time shutting their brain down and getting the benefit of quieting the mind and really letting Stephen do his work or do the release work.
Receiving.
Yes, totally. They have a hard time with that. Mm-hmm. And then the person
letting go.
And letting go.
Receiving.
And the person that only wants to see Stephen, that doesn't want to be me, they're afraid sometimes to kind of push themselves to see if it's okay. And so they have a hard time with the other side of what the brain wants to hijack us.
It's all about balance.
It's all about balance.
Mm-hmm. So you've both talked a lot about fascia, and we hear it all over the place now. When I met you guys 10 years ago or more, I think this was one of the first places I heard about fascia. I'd done some foam rolling and myofascial release, so I kind of knew what it was, but not really. Mm-hmm. And then I've been educated over the years and learned how powerful it is, and it's really something that you've devoted your career.
For sure, and with fascia, it's a thing where it taught me to look holistically at the body. Mm-hmm. And so when I was doing hands-on treatment, looking at the whole body, Pilates and the gyrotonic world made a lot of sense because they were moving the whole body. Mm-hmm. And so from a standpoint of kind of what she said, if we release certain things, release the fascia, and then we strengthen the fascia with whole body movement, they really work well together. But with fascia, for me, I kind of went down a very traditional path my first 5 years, and I wasn't getting people better. And I was pretty frustrated, and I did all the evidence-based stuff that I was supposed to do, the stuff that gave me a bunch of acronyms behind my name, but it didn't necessarily, wasn't helping the people. And so I kept hearing about, in my evidence-based world, the people that I was spending a lot of money to take these courses and get certified, they would spend 5 or 10 minutes making fun of this guy every single course. And I kept writing his name down. And I'm like, why are they continuing to talk about this guy? But by them continuing to talk about this guy, eventually, when I was frustrated with what I was learning in the evidence-based world, I went and studied with this guy. And his name is John Barnes. And I'd heard a little bit about fascia prior to him from another guy named Alan Weissmantel, another physical therapist. But Alan's a guy that's been kind of doing his own little thing in a small little circle, and John's got a big tribe. And John's the guy that coined the word myofascial release. So John F. Barnes, myofascial release is kind of his I guess, trademarked word now. But anyway, that's where I really dove into the world, and I'd already been exposed to Pilates, so I was starting to look at the whole body with strengthening. So if someone had a shoulder injury, I was strengthening their core, that I wasn't addressing the fascial restrictions or their imbalances. And then I started realizing, well, damn, if I'm going to strengthen their core, they need to be in as good a mechanical position as possible. So John Barnes' world kind of taught me, if we look at the whole body and again get everything in balance, and then Pilates strengthen all that, boom, it was what merged it together. But John is the guy that for about 50 years has been talking about fascia. And now for the last...
So let's go to the 101 too.
Yeah.
What is fascia?
Yeah, so...
Most people don't know.
A lot of people throw it around and kind of know it exists, but don't.
So fascia is basically like a three-dimensional spider web in our body. And it's kind of the space. It takes up all the space. So we've got muscles, we've got bones, we've got organs, we've got all these things in our body. Well, here's an organ. Well, fascia surrounds it. Well,
and it goes in it.
Totally, it goes through it. It goes in it. It surrounds it. It's three-dimensional. It's not linear. It's totally three-dimensional. And here's a muscle. It surrounds it. Here's a nerve. It surrounds it. Here's an organ, whatever. It's surrounded internally. So here's your bone. Here's a muscle around it. The fascia will go through the muscle, through the bone. So it's not something that only is like superficial.
And talk about your experience with the cadaver, because that helps people too.
Yeah, so in PT school, my cadaver experience, this was 1996, and I'm pretty sure it's pretty much the same now, but actually I don't think they deal with cadavers. It's all like online and stuff now. But in 96, we had a cadaver, and what they told me to do was get the fascia out of the way. So you could clearly see a layer of the fascia when you were dissecting. You could not see it intertwining into the muscle or the bone until you started digging in. But there was this layer of skin that they wanted, or this layer of tissue that they get it out of the way. And we literally filled up a 5-gallon bucket of fascia from a 130, 40-pound man, skinny dude.
And you can see that when you're cutting a chicken. That little white
little
film.
silvery.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's that translucent kind of material. And that's what fascia is. So, or if you look at an orange and you cut an orange in half, and it's kind of like what it holds that orange together. If you bite
and it's all in like veins.
Yes.
Exactly. And you bite into an orange, what happens? Fluid. So the next step with fascia is that it contains fluid. So it's a bunch of microtubules that allow fluid to pass. So when fascia is bound down and tight and restricted, it doesn't allow the fluids to go through. So that's the reason fascia causes trouble. So fascia, when, here's a nerve, all of a sudden that fascia binds down on it, it's thousands, like 2,000 PSI or something. I think that's the proper
measuring.
Measuring.
They measure the amount of pressure that's put
it's
on
tremendous. It's tremendous.
Because
and so,
of the weight of water.
Mm-hmm. And we've all heard we're 70% water, right?
Right.
Well, the fascia is our cup. It's not our bones. It's not our skin. It's the fascia. And if you removed our bones and you removed our skin, we would hold our form just like we are.
Wow.
Because
the fascia is in the skin too.
That's amazing.
Does that make sense?
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It's almost like a shadow self.
It's all, like your soul, kind of.
It has been neglected for all of medicine until recently.
And how does it intertwine with the neurological system?
Well, it surrounds the brain, it surrounds the nerves, it's
but
everywhere.
it carries messages, doesn't it? Or transports them?
When it's open, the fluids are flowing.
Okay.
And so yes, it is communicating. When it is closed down or restricted, that fluid is not working. That fluid is not going where it should throughout the body.
So if somebody was in like a car wreck, that's trauma.
Correct.
Immediate trauma to the fascia.
Yes.
So
to the whole body,
but
the fascia remembers it.
Remembers
The fascia
it.
remembers
Yes,
it.
yes.
It
And
takes
so,
a snapshot. So like when you go through a trauma, let's say you're getting whiplashed around, you will typically check out to protect yourself. You know, your body will just kind of like zone
Mentally,
out.
Your conscious
mind
brain.
will.
Yeah, exactly.
Your conscious brain.
Your conscious brain will be out, but your fascia will go through this whole like twisting, contorting, and whatnot. And it'll take a snapshot of that, and it'll either choose to do one or two things: process it right then and there, which is rare, or you'll go into fight or flight, or what we now know a lot about is a freeze response. Whereas back in the day when I was in school, we only talked about fight or flight. So this freeze response is where someone kind of gets stuck for this in between these for a long time, and that's where I see with people with car accidents is that they're stuck in this fight or flight response with. Let's say they're in fight, adrenaline's pumping. We can't live on adrenaline, and you will be exhausted. So people will get diagnosed with chronic fatigue and adrenal disorders and things like that because adrenaline's just pumping all the time from a traumatic experience, and maybe back from when you were a kid, maybe back from 2 days ago, maybe who knows in between.
Who knows?
And so then there's the other side of it of we're going to flight. So we're not fighting, we're going to flight. Well, that's just going to cortisol. So cortisol is dumping into the brain. So we've got adrenaline versus cortisol. And then freeze is something different. And I don't know it well enough to talk about, but there's a whole lot of...
But we're done.
I'm not going to talk too much about the actual freeze. But,
I know, when you were talking about it, I was like, whoa, this is a new one.
but the freeze is what people are talking about now, and I don't understand it as much because it's new. It's a newer thing, but that it's kind of like, are you stuck? To me, my perception is, are you stuck in one or the other? And if you're stuck in one or the other, you froze in one or the other, then that's going to dictate your life. That's going to dictate everything. When you wake up from the moment.
And it won't just dictate that shoulder hurting. It will...
Everything. Completely. And until the fascia and until you unconsciously let go of that fascial holding pattern, you won't heal. You won't get well. And you'll continue to hold on to that, not on your own, not on purpose. It's totally unconscious. And so once that fascia releases, and this is where it gets kind of weird because people will move and shake, and it looks kind of like they're having seizures, and it's totally normal and natural. But it like from
Some people would
cry, voice things. It's all kind of stuff, and it's kind of shocking. I'll tell you a quick story about a girl that she kind of blew my mind. She was in a car wreck. She was young 20s, and she got in a car wreck in another state 3 weeks earlier. Came home, lived here, but was in school, college at another state. For 3 weeks, didn't know her name, didn't know her parents, didn't know where she was. She was completely out of it from her accident. And when she came in and I spoke to her, she had no idea. She couldn't answer my questions. Like, she was completely out of it. And she sat here on the end of this table, this exact table we're on right now, and I just started doing some fascial cranial work by addressing the fascial system. Because John has taught me to work on all the structures in the brain, the skull, that will affect the nervous system as much as we can through the fascia. So I start working on her, and within about 2 minutes, it looks like she's having a full-on seizure. And her mom was like totally freaking out, and I was told, I don't know how I played it off. Like, I played it to her mom, like, I'm like, just chill, and it's all good. And so the mom was just kind of like this, and the daughter literally just kind of fell from sitting on my table to laying on my table. And then she twisted on her side, and then she twisted on her other side, and then she kind of curled up in a ball, and then she woke up.
And you're kind of doing cranial work, but you're guiding her through the head the whole time.
I'm holding her in a certain position the whole time, but she is actually going through the movement that she went through in a car accident. So all of a sudden, she is on my table her body is revisiting what she checked out at that moment 3 weeks earlier. She looked at me and said, "Who are you? Where the hell am I?" She had no idea where she was, but she was now back. And from that moment on, I didn't really need to do anything else. She was good. She was fine.
Isn't it crazy?
And it's weird, but if she was with it, she wouldn't have, her body, if she was two, if someone's in or out of that consciousness, if she was in a normal place, she wouldn't have let herself go there. But because she was stuck in this place and her body was she was out of it, she didn't hold herself back. She let herself go. And again, it was 2 or 3 minutes of actual, like, me holding her, and then like 2 or 3 minutes of her, like, convulsing, we'll say. And then she walked out of here and was like, good. She came in 2-3 days later. She says, whatever you did, don't do that crap again.
That's not an uncommon response either.
But she was totally like, we were done. I didn't, she had a little aches and pains, but she was just stuck in a place and everyone wanted to medicate her. But she couldn't even answer questions because she was stuck in this place that her fascia had held her in. And no matter what anyone talked to her about, no matter what she saw or did, until her body physically went through that was what she needed to get out of the broken record. And I've had a handful of those stories, and I don't have many, but I have a handful in there. But I remember every one of them, and I'll remember all those people forever.
And that's your evidence.
So so there's not a lot of evidence to support any of what I just talked about, but I don't care because that is someone that got better that I would have never helped if I wouldn't have been willing to look at her from a fascial standpoint instead of a human who was like stuck in this psychosis or this, needed to be in a freaking shrink, seeing a shrink, not me. But every other PT in the world would have, not in the world, but most PTs would have said, you need anything I can do with you, I'm not going to touch it. And I had nothing to do with it.
So do you think more and more caregivers will start to look at fascia and this more holistic approach to healing, or do you think a lot of people are just scared to go there?
I think they will because of evidence is starting to shift, and they're starting to support it a little bit. And a few years ago, in like 15 or 16, I think.
Now there's a whole fascial conference.
Yeah, and that's been going on since the late 90s. That's what was cool about talking to Carol Davis.
Oh.
That fascial congress has been going on since like the late 90s. I think 98 or 97. I can't remember exactly. But there are people that meet from all over the world now that share their evidence. There's a hand surgeon in France named Jean-Claude Gomberto. I'm slaughtering it.
Cajun French.
He is a French hand surgeon, and if you Google or look up on YouTube, "strolling under the skin," that's his.
And you can see the water on the fascia.
Maybe we can put a link to that.
So,
yeah.
And what his stuff shows is that you go under the skin and you see live fascia versus what I saw was dead fascia back when I was in school, which was just this layer of stuff to get out of the way. Now you're seeing it live, and it's this 3-dimensional network of cells, and you can see the water. You can the damn camera gets fogged over, like it's wet. He has to pull it out and wipe it off because of the moisture, and it's not like a blood moisture. It's like, and you can see the capillaries or the arteries in the blood veins with the fascia going around it, going through it.
And I'll share with our listeners that I've seen this video, and it is fascinating. And it completely changes the way you view everything about your body and the majesty of what's going on. And so we will really look for this and try to link under this podcast in the notes. We'll try to link that, and it's worth your time.
It is.
If you've got a few minutes, it's worth your time to check it out.
Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of something that, because of people like him, Tom Myers wrote anatomy trainings. There's all these posters behind me. He's actually a rolfer and a massage therapist who, because of his study of fascia, has really gained. He's one of the top authorities on it. Whereas back in the day, someone who was a massage therapist would have never been able to gain up in the ranks, but he's been bucking the system teaching fascia, and now people are starting to say, hey, there's something to it. But a few years ago, modern science said there's a new organ called the interstitium. So if you look up the interstitium, it'll be, and I've done blogs on it, and they've basically named fascia an organ, and they've called it the interstitium, which is the interstitium space. It's a space between the layers. And my teacher's kind of like, well, it's cool that they're calling it something. It's not really an organ, but it is. They're acknowledging that it's something more than just useless cartilage or useless connective tissue that we need to get out of the body. So people are starting to study without being embalmed, or without they're called fresh cadavers now, where they've got all their blood, they've got all their fascia, it's all intact, and it's nasty. I would love to do it.
This is why I'm not a doctor.
I would love to do that.
No way.
But an embalmed cadaver or whatever that process they take them through to go through that, it's very different. There's no blood. There's no, it's like roast beef. So there's a roast beef. You don't eat roast beef sandwiches. For a long time. But anyway, so the science is starting to come around, and like John has worked with many people. I think he's worked with 90 to 100,000 people over the course of his 50-year career of teaching, and he's working with PTs, OTs, MDs, only a few, osteopaths, only a few, some nurses, some speech therapists, people who aren't even
movement
people
therapists.
People who don't even don't have a license to touch. They come learn my work. Because it's powerful, because it's working the whole body, and it is working the mind, it is working. And when I say working, it's not like working out, working the mind. It's like letting go of some holding patterns. Now, John's a pretty interesting dude, and he says we all are traumatized the moment we enter the world. He says we're a bowling ball and we're shoved through a garden hose when we're born. And he goes, that's traumatic on both sides, and that's a trauma to a mama, and that's a trauma to a baby that just happens right away, that no one addresses. Period. And so he's really interesting, and talking to him and listening to him, and I've taken 5 or 6 courses with him now all over the world. Actually, it's fun. It's been pretty fun. But he's just amazing.
And Stephen did fascia work on our children.
On
right
my kids, on my dog. And I was kind of I'm glad
kids
you
are
said
interesting.
Oh, and I had an old dog, my old boxer. When I was working with John first courses, I wasn't really getting it. I'd taken 2 courses with him. This was my 2nd course. We were here in Austin. First course was in the Bahamas, and he's like, "Man, go home and work on your dog." And he goes, and I said, "What do I do?" He goes, "Just do the technique and do what we've been doing in class for the last 2 days. Like, you don't have to have a plan. Just pick something, do something." And my dog had 2 ACL surgeries on both knees, and she wouldn't let me touch her. Like, she wouldn't let me touch her. And I started working on her psoas. I started doing some of the release work on the psoas, and all of a sudden, she totally relaxed. And she just laid there, and she kind of gave me her leg and set her leg in my arm. And so I was able to do things that she'd never let me do before, because all of a sudden, through tapping into her fascial system, she totally relaxed. When I used to go touch her knee, which had surgery, she went into that fear mode. She went into that that last time, there's a trauma having surgery. There's a trauma of that knife going into her knee. We're under. But our body feels it, our fascia feels it, our fascia knows it. So that's another trauma that we all have, whether it's some kind of surgical. I had my appendix out, I had LASIK done. Those are all traumatic to your fascia, because guess what's being affected? Your eye has fascia around it, so it's everywhere, and it's slowly creeping into a bigger picture, and people are understanding it, because the yoga world understands it, the Pilates world understands it. So it's kind of in that more alternative world. But my teacher John says it's not about alternative, it's about authentic healing. And so if you can authentically let go and let your fascia let go, you're going to feel better. But then I believe, and he doesn't believe this, you need to move and get strong and change that. But he says if you unwind your body, that's the movement he facilitates. That's a different type of move. I don't get people to do that as much as he does. So does that make sense?
Yes. I don't know if you listeners hear this or not, but if you hear this random snoring,
it's not me.
We have a boxer that just likes to sit right here behind us, and it's this underlying snore.
She's very relaxed. Right?
Yeah.
This is the Anatomy Trains book with Tom Myers that I think is a must read.
We can also link that.
Yes. Yeah.
This is a book from Carol Davis, who's a PhD and a PT that been teaching in PT schools for years. I think her new model is called integrative therapies. And then this is more for clinicians, but John Barnes is my fascial release book. He has a book called Healing Ancient Wounds, and another book that's out for, I can't remember the name of it, that's for the general public. But those are the people in my world that I study with, and they can go into much greater detail. I've tried to keep it fairly layman's terms, but with some science in
this
what we
has
talk
been a
about.
great introduction for us, and I mean, honestly, we're almost at the end of our podcast now, And there's so much more we could talk about. So we'll just have to table some of the deeper discussions. This is part one, because there's so many ways that you can integrate this knowledge into your life. It's really not just for the clinician or the master trainer. Everyone can use this. So we'll, maybe do a part two here coming up shortly.
Anytime.
And we have a couple things we want to ask everyone who comes onto our podcast. And so we'll start with you, Cheryl.
I will let
you.
Ask Stephen. Okay, so how do you incorporate balance into your life, or what does that look for you? Or the one thing you do daily that helps you balance?
The one thing I do daily is listen to music. And kind of use, whether I'm in here working with people, whether I'm home and I'm plugged into my earphones. And what I don't do daily, but I do as much as I can, is I go see live music. And I know you don't like to see live music, so I go without it. And I go with friends or I go by myself. But by going to see live music, it's a common place where you don't just see or hear, you feel the vibration. You feel it you feel it in your fascia, you feel it in your body, you feel it in your soul, whatever you want to call that. So to me, that's something that I do not as much as I like to, but I do it as much as I can. But daily I'm listening to music in here when I'm working, and that's a way for me to kind of ground myself and kind of balance myself. So
fascinating.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Okay,
Okay, good.
Do you want to be put on the spot?
I don't want to be put on the spot.
We have a whole podcast about what we view as balance. So, all right, I'm going to take it one step further. Because of your profession and your clinic, and I'll ask this to you jointly, what do you recommend to your students, your patients, or what would you say is one thing or maybe a couple key things you would give to them to take into their lives to incorporate more balance or more wellness?
I think just trying to be mindful, and trying to be mindful when you sit, because of sitting is just the most common problematic thing where we collapse and have so much trouble. So I think if you can create a mindfulness and awareness with sitting,
so body awareness.
Exactly. And that body awareness comes from mental awareness to actually understand if you're sitting correctly or sitting poorly. So I think that's something, and that's what I do professionally with every person who comes in the door, try to help them understand their posture and be aware of if they're here, or if they're swaying their back, or if they're flat in their back. And it's not an easy tip. Like that's an overall, like that's what I'm trying to help everyone. Mm-hmm. That's my mission and passion. But that tip is broken into many steps, and everyone has different steps and a different map to get there. Like here's a common path, right? Like this is a common path we take everyone through, but everyone has different tangents and we'll say
ways to get there.
Yeah, exactly. Little cul-de-sacs over here, little roadblocks over there.
It's like we're all headed to San Antonio, but there are many ways to get to San Antonio from Austin, right?
That's a good point.
So,
and some are really blocked up.
Exactly. That's right. It might take you a really long time to get there, and it might be quick.
That's right.
But I to answer that question too, mindfulness. That's my number one goal. Is just when somebody can become aware and mindful of where they are, where they're headed, where they have been, where they want to go. That's the first step of healing and just taking control and making that their goal and their passion to, get to where they want to be.
Beautiful. And so hopefully everyone can find someone like you in their lives. And here at Envibe Life, we will do our best to help as we all continue on this journey together. So thank you so much, Stephen, for being here with us. That was fun.
Thanks for having me. And again, I told you at the beginning, I got to talk about this for a long time. I was like, 30 minutes is going to go by
it went by so fast. Yeah, awesome. So much fun.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, well, we'll do it again for sure.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Envibe Life podcast. For more information and to join our community, be sure and check out our website at www.envibelife.com. We look forward to sharing with you.